Last year, there was a film starring Mark Wahlberg that was open for new investors at a 4-to-1 tax deduction, meaning that you can invest in a Mark Wahlberg film for $100,000, let's say, generate a $400,000 tax deduction. That launched in August of last year. Really, by the end of September, they had all the money that they needed. So they would not accept new investors. So for those that are thinking about tax strategy earlier, typically they're going to have more options and better options. Well, there's one particular strategy that comes to mind immediately. We've got one of our popular strategies is in domestic film financing. This is section 181, and it relates to incentives for film producers to, instead of going offshore where they might be able to produce it for less, staying here in America and producing the film here. That did not make it into the One Big Beautiful Bill last year. And because it did not, it expired at the end of 2025. But there's a grandfathering provision that allows for films that started production in 2025 to still remain eligible for this particular strategy. There's going to be very few films, much fewer films than there were before. And the closer that we get to the year end, not only, or there's potential where it might not even be an option, but certainly you won't have the best options. Typically with this strategy anyways, like the best films fill up fast.
Jeremy, this kind of blows my mind. And so I can be involved in film production, not send my money to Washington and get that kind of a tax savings. Why don't more people take advantage of this? What are they missing?
Unfortunately, it comes down to education. They're working with a tax preparer. There's a key distinction there. Like one is very transactional, that you get what you pay for. The tax preparer, if all you paid them for is tax returns, that's what you're going to get. So during the year, that's all they're working on for you. So the difference between a tax advisor is stark. They are much more proactive. They are reaching out to their clients, like my team and I are, and making sure that they have the best information available. Last week, I finally was able to get through due diligence on some new strategies this year, and we presented our top 5 strategies for 2026 to our tax advisory clients. And that kicks off mid-year tax planning meetings where we're looking at the prior year result. We're asking the client what is going to change this year, and we're helping them get to zero, that they expect to pay $100,000 in tax based on forward projections for this year. We're crafting a strategy based on that number and then presenting them one of those 5 options. So what a lot of people are missing is they're not in the right relationship. You get what you pay for.
Yeah, it's true. Jeremy, I think that you started me thinking about this, just the title of your book about zero tax, that it makes me think before it's just whatever the tax preparer says you owe, then you just end up sending that and don't feel like you have any choices. But this set me to thinking that I want to mitigate what I'm going to end up paying to Washington in any way that I possibly can. And so tell me about, that mindset that most people have, that just you have to pay what you have to pay and not realizing. You said it's about education. How are you working to get this message out there so people can keep their hard-earned money and put it to better uses?
Yeah, it's an educational process, really. We're trying to help them understand or see the tax code differently.
Yeah.
And not as a penalty system, but just as policy. It's an incentive system. I mean, they continue to prove themselves to be poor at creating jobs and creating housing and building things in general. So guess what? The tax code's full of economic incentives, financial incentives for those that can to do more.
What have you seen when you save somebody their hard dollars and it doesn't have to go to Washington? What do they end up doing with that money, Jeremy? Can you give me some examples of, different ways they put it to use instead of just sending it off in their taxes?
Yeah, a lot of them are very generous people, whether that's giving to their church or an environmentally friendly cause, or really it's just about keeping the money in the community where it can multiply versus sending it to the government, whether that's Sacramento or Washington, D.C.,
Right.
or any other state capital, except for those that don't have a state income tax, of course. What we found when we were researching the book is that for every dollar that goes into Washington, D.C. in the form of a tax payment, only 60 cents makes it out. Like mostly it just gets absorbed by the swarm. That's why they call it the swarm. Like what goes in kind of just doesn't go out.
Right.
It's a dirty world. The velocity of money happens much more naturally in the hands of private citizens like you and I. The dollar can multiply by up to 3 times in the restaurant setting when people pay with cash. Like when you're thinking about like tipping the server or tipping the valet, they don't keep that money for long. Or they go out and spend it. That cash is in somebody else's hand and they spend it. And it's all staying in a concentrated area near the taxpayer's home. So what we found is the community does better when the tax dollars stay there.
Can you tell me a story about somebody that you've helped that really made a difference in what they were able to do once they kept that money for themselves, for their community, for the business that they had?
I can tell you that a dollar that goes to Washington, like you don't have anymore. But when you keep it, like whether or not you spend it or not, like we actually encourage our clients to reinvest it in their future first. I mean, a lot of them are very naturally generous to begin with, and like they'll do charitable things with it. But it's amazing if I were to show you a graph of what happens to, let's say, paying on average $100,000 of tax per year, and you're working with a qualified tax advisor, and we're able to eliminate that. So you still have that $100,000. And ultimately, what we're trying to coach and educate our clients to do is not just spend it, but to set it aside for your future selves, your future family legacy. We found is if we just use a market, like the average market return recently has been pretty high. I mean, 10% is not extraordinary. Or over the last 5 years or so, 10 years even, $100,000 over your peak earning years of 10, let's say you got 10 peak earning years, you save $100,000 in taxes per year and you reinvest it, whether it's stocks or bonds or your own business or anything, at a compounding 10% per year growth rate, instead of having $0, right? Because it would have gone to the government in the form of tax payments. You wouldn't have any of those dollars. But at the end of that 10 years, you would have $1.8 million.
Hmm.
So that's really the power of compounding tax savings. And really what it does is it secures the future generation in that case. Some pretty sad stories out there right now. This is a way that maybe those of you that are parents can help safeguard that future generation with the liquidity they might need to buy a house, start their own business. But really, primarily what we see a lot of our clients do is either give more to charity or invest it back into their business and create more jobs for the community, which both are very positive.
Yeah. That's interesting. When you bring up the rising generation of, our future workforce, they're getting out of college, Jeremy, they're going to work, maybe struggling to find things because of AI being a factor now. What should they know about taxes? Because I think that they just get their paycheck, it's already deducted, they're hoping to get a refund, and that's just the mindset that most of us enter the workforce with. What would you tell somebody that's 22, just starting off, how they should be thinking differently about taxes as they begin to build their career, make more money, and to be able to protect it, and so they can do great things in their community?
Yeah. I would say first and foremost, I would ask them to look into where that money actually goes and how it's put to use by the people in charge of it and whether like they're seeing the results that they want from that. The federal government collects up to $4 trillion a year in tax payments, and it's not enough to cover the budget. So the first question that I had is like, where is this money going
Right.
and how is it being used?
Right.
And then from there, it progresses towards, is there a better way? Like, am I stuck paying this? There's several books out there that one could read, including the Zero Tax Strategy,
Yes.
about there is a better way.
Yeah. It's interesting. You're talking about the federal government. I'm thinking about California's state government too. I was just listening to a podcast today about the deficits that are being run, about the billionaires tax that could drive a lot of business owners outside of the state. And so that's interesting, Jeremy, for people that live in California, that are making money, that have successful businesses. When they come to you, how do you help them so they can stay there? I mean, California is my favorite state. I'd love to be able to stay, but for a lot of people, you don't want to get chased out because of taxes. And so what do you tell them that's different so they can stay?
Yeah, I mean, the California tax is high. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the federal tax is always the biggest pain point. And before leaving California, I would encourage them to do a comparison on where they're going to. I mean, California has
Uh,
really high income taxes that can be mitigated with a good tax strategy. But other states have different types of taxes that are, believe it or not, higher than California. Like Texas comes to mind. Like the property tax in Texas is enough to get some people concerned who are thinking about buying a house there. Would you rather? Would you rather write this estimated tax payment check and send it to the government, or have this money withheld from your paycheck and go into this black box and hope for a refund? Or would you rather invest in your future self? I say tax strategy, what we're really talking about in a lot of cases is just optimizing your situation.
yeah. Jeremy, I'm looking ahead already at next year and the taxes that I'm going to owe. And I'm trying to find every way that I can that I can lower that. Am I thinking about that right? I mean, what do you think about lowering your tax bills and
An obligation to pay tax. But there was a famous tax court case, really foundational from decades ago. Judge Learned Hand essentially put into writing what we believe today as a foundation for our philosophy. United States citizens are not obligated to pay $1 more than they absolutely have to. So they can arrange their affairs in the best way so that they pay the least amount of tax.
that is exactly what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tax code is policy. All it is. That's all it is. It's policy. It's not punishment.
Yeah.
So learning about the tax code and how it can help you legally reduce your taxes, how we connect those dots. And the tax code is a beast, 80,000 pages just in the code alone.
I'm going to say, when you say learn the tax code, for most of us, that's not probably going to happen.
Yeah. Or just find a good tax advisor, recognize the difference between a tax preparer and a tax advisor. And it always comes down to that choice. Like, would you rather write that check to the government or to your future self?
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad that you said that. And so for somebody, they've been going to a tax preparer for years. What questions should they be asking themselves to see if the person is actually finding every opportunity and making sure that they're paying as little as they have to pay? What questions should they ask? What should they be thinking about for the person that's handling their taxes?
Great question. I would always recommend there be a tax return review meeting live if possible to discuss the bottom line before e-filing it. If that's not possible, review the tax return with the tax preparer and ask them, how could I do better this year? You're not going to get a lot of great answers. Tax preparers are, like, that's the business they're in. Like, they are in the business of preparing tax returns based on historical data. They're typically not forward looking. What you want to find is somebody who's bringing you ideas. If you find that you're bringing ideas to your CPA or to your tax person, it's time to look around for better options.
Great. Okay. And last question for today, Jeremy. I was thinking about you and your team. When people come to you, if you look back at their past returns, what things do you see that people have missed? Money that they've paid that they may not be getting back, and that, there was opportunities all along that they could have been taking advantage of. What do you see?
Hmm. Um, First thing I look at on the tax return is total tax liability or total tax paid, total tax owed for the year.
Yeah,
And I always see that as the opportunity. Like, that's how much I can help this person because I believe so strongly in the idea of zero tax.
that's good. Jeremy, this is what I love, that, I think a lot of people think of taxes as something, I just want my tax prepared. They don't want to even think about it, but you make it sound fun. You make it sound, like exciting to think about the possibilities of zeroing out that tax, about the things that you can do. And so you can keep the money, put it to work in your life and in your community. I think that's fantastic. And so I love all the things that you've shared.